Hi, welcome back. I'll be dissecting some more of my photographs today, this time from another two events, which were also in September 2021. The first few photographs will be from the Royal Naval Association Biennial Parade, and the last few will be from the Druidic Autumn Equinox Ceremony on Primrose Hill. So this first photograph is of the parade itself as the soldiers marched. The actual orientation of this photograph is flipped. It originally was shot like this. You can see they're just marching in front of me a few steps away. And I wanted to time it so that the shadows were quite well defined. You've got the arms here, they're marching quite nicely in sync. You've got the heads, which all kind of line up into this triangle. And then the actual presentation of the photograph flipped, which I think is quite effective because that way they're moving from left to right across the frame. You've got the road markings in a way that you're not really familiar with, so your eye is really drawn to the shadows. Some of the feedback I received from the last video of these that I did where I was dissecting a different set of photographs was that they wanted me to remove the red marker lines that I was using to mark out the elements of the photograph that I was talking about so that they could see the photograph again afterwards. So I'm going to be doing that throughout, and hopefully that's useful to you. This photograph was later on in the more restricted area. So this is only the soldiers themselves, the naval officers, their families, and I was one of only 4 photographers who was allowed in. What I liked about this scene was obviously the layers. You've got the foreground with these officers. You've got the midground of the kind of crowd here who are listening to a speech which is being given over here. You've got this fellow who's the outlier on the left. And then what I was waiting for was this photographer who I think works for Reuters. As she climbed up, this photographer here is I believe he's the one who works with the Royal Naval Association. So they both climbed up onto the wall here. I noticed that she was going to climb up further to walk across to get a higher angle. So I waited for her to walk across and then managed to capture her. So she's the the outlying element that draws the eye in this photograph. This photograph I'm a little bit annoyed by because of my development failure, essentially. You've got this character in the foreground who's looking out over the men, but unfortunately, because the sky was so bright and there was such high contrast, you actually lose a bit of detail what should be in his hat here, which is kind of a shame. I think it means that I'm not going to be able to use this photograph in print for anything important, and I'll have to make an effort at this later on to be a little bit more careful with my exposure. But in order to get him, well exposed against the sky, I did need to expose for him rather than the sky. It was quite a bright sunny day. Hopefully next year I'll either have some kind of solution to that, or I might use like a split grade when printing this and see if that helps. The rest of the image is quite solid. You've got leading lines here dynamically across. You've got all of the soldiers here. I think this woman's one of the family members of one of the soldiers. She's gone to take her picture as well. Ideally, this would be a little bit cleaner with her missing, but it's okay because overall, I think the image isn't the most powerful that it could be. But I will make an effort to try and get a similar photograph, with the officer standing quite high above the men in terms of perspective in the way that he does here. I'll be trying for that next time. Now we move on to the Druids photographs. This one was taken at the top of Primrose Hill. It was quite a simple photograph, wide angle. I was waiting for the wind to kind of flutter the banner out the way so that I could get the sun bleeding out, and you've got the nice sun star effect, which they kind of look like they're a part of the banner itself, which is nice. Aside from this element, I don't really think that there's that much of value going on here. It's kind of an establishing shot. It shows that the characters in the white robes, shows that they're standing in a circle, shows that they're holding the banners, but not too much going on in terms of the interaction or any kind of dynamic interaction going on. This photograph is a little bit better. Again, wide angle, much closer to the people. you can see the hands being held here, and that's a nice kind of gesture. You've got the ceremonial sword being held by this guy over here, which is a nice balancing mirror to the light pole over here. You've also got the BT tower quite far in the background, but it's not really too much of an element of the frame. And the rest of it, you've got, you can see the kind of hooded figures, not in focus, purely as context to the moment which I liked, which was the hands being held over here. One of the better photographs from this, I think, is this one, where you've got the foreground, which is the banner being held by this fellow here. And then in the corner here, you've got this kind of braided tassel, which goes all the way down, loops up, and then is being held by this woman here. And it's kind of reminiscent of prayer beads in the way that she's holding them, but the fact that they directly connect to the foreground element really works for me. You've got the well-balanced faces here with good figure to ground on, so you can make out the contrast. You've got this character in the background here, which mirrors this face. You've got this character here who's looking at something off camera, possibly talking to the fellow whose arm this is. I think this is a far more dynamic frame. You've got the dividing element of the hand and the banner staff. You've got the interaction here, as well as the interaction between the midground and the foreground. And then you've got enough going on in the background that your eyes moving through the scene. People are still putting on their robes, like this woman's on her phone. It's a nice little selection of characters to keep your eye moving around. This photograph was during the ceremony itself. It's the druid who is holding the sword in the earlier photograph. At this moment, he unsheathed it, which gave me a nice, sorry, that wasn't the best I could do, which gave me a nice element straight across the frame here. This nice straight line is complemented by the banner, which is being held here, but it's mainly about him being a kind of shadowy figure. You can see he's holding his book of incantations, and you can feel through the foreground, because we're close enough to these people that we're part of the circle, rather than as well as looking over their shoulders, we are also part of the circle in order to participate and see what's going on with the ceremony here. And then this photograph was taken at the end when they were making their way back down Primrose Hill. What I quite like about this is that you've got this nice kind of balanced composition here between these two arcs of the cornucopia being held here and the robes here. I like that you've got the city skyline here, you've got the iconic shard here, so that situates it, and then you've got this layer of trees, that's nature, and then you've got the layer of druids, and it's kind of a nature separating the druids from the urbanity, but then they are walking on concrete, which I quite like. There's elements here that you can read into. Thank you again for joining. I hope you've got something out of me sharing my photographs and some of what went into making them, some of my thought process behind them, and I'll hopefully have some more videos doing similar things soon. Thank you again.